On today's show, it is part 2 of 2 with Tyler Jones, a good fan favorite of the podcast, also one of the co-hosts of ATL on 29. We're talking all things NBA draft, number one overall pick, and more, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1748 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday during the week of the NBA draft. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. This summer, FanDuel is hooking us all up. Yes, all of us, all customers, with a boost or bonus. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long at FanDuel. And the place to go is FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Also want to encourage you to tell your friends about the podcast, also to find us each and every day and listen and subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify. We're also on YouTube, and the Everydayer Club is always something you should be joining to support the podcast. Today's show is actually going to be part 2 of 2 with myself and Tyler Jones. So if you missed part 1, I highly recommend listening to part 1 before part 2. It should be available in your same podcast feed right now. If you are listening to that, we'll come back to part 2, and we'll dive back in, myself and Tyler Jones. Here we go. So you're really high on Clingan. We've established that. I'm going to throw the curveball. We're not going to do Sarr next. Let's talk about Risacher for a second. Because Risacher, as I alluded to earlier, is now the betting favorite to go number 1 overall. I will get into more of this on the last show on Tuesday before the draft, but I don't have Risacher that high. I think you like him more than I do based on our discussions. I know our guy Andrew Kelly likes him more than I do, for instance. There is a split on him. It seems like the mainstream / the NBA are higher on Risacher than the internet happens to be. Nothing wrong with that, just the way it is. But what's your reaction if they draft Risacher? Because I think right now, if you were to go to FanDuel and place a bet, the most likely scenario is projected to be that. So let's just talk about that for a second. What's your reaction if they do that?
I know Twitter going to be blowing up.
It would be quite a reaction. I agree. Yes.
It's very funny how people just don't like him. I like him. I think I like the shot. I've always liked the shot. It just looks great. It looks great out of his hands.
He has improved that quite a bit. But this is an offshoot, but I talked to Sam Seen about this on the show, actually. His numbers, and I'm guilty of this too, his numbers before this year as a shooter were not that good. And he changed his mechanics, which I think I forgot to mention a few times. Like, his mechanics look a lot better now than they did 2 years ago. And that might just be what it is now. I should at least acknowledge that, because I have brought up the old shooting as maybe a bit of a warning sign without noting that the mechanics did change, which is important.
Here's the thing. If a basketball player who's played over 65 games in the past season and shot 40% from 3 on decent volume, not elite volume, we'll talk about that later, but on decent volume, yeah. If we're just gonna be I don't know about the shooting, then we're just gonna do that about every prospect. We're literally gonna do that about every prospect.
It's a good point. I've tried to nitpick a little bit. No, it's a good point. I'm glad you said that, because I tried to nitpick it a little bit because the previous sample wasn't very good. And even this year, he was really, really hot, really, really cold, and really, really hot again, which I think does, over the sample matters more. It matters more.
That sounds like Bogey.
That's true. That's a fair point.
Bogey has these stretches, and then he gets cold for a month. Paul George does it as well. Elite. This is what happened with shooters.
Playoff P?
Playoff P, yes. Even and these shooters go through stretches where they're hot and cold. Trae Young does it. No,
I'm glad you said. You know what? That was a positive point by you. Thank you for that. I'm being too negative.
What if I'm a Zaccharie Risacher doubter, is the volume wasn't there, but I would only counter from me watching about 5 or 6 of his games, is that his role was never going to be he was never going to be put in a situation where he's going to get over 10 plus threes per 100 possession.
No, he wasn't in a bottom role.
That's just not the role he was in, and also that's not how they play in the French league. The offense they were running, this isn't the offense they're going to run in the NBA. So this is where I get bothered by a lot of people just downplaying his talent, because I'm guys, the offense they were running in France ain't the offense they're going to run in Atlanta or anywhere in the NBA. No team, Brad. Because I was watching Sam and why am I blanking on my man's name for the Detroit?
Was it Bryce Simon?
Bryce, yes. Yeah. Apologies. When they were breaking down his game, they were talking about how the defense was basically ignoring him or whatever, like how he got 28 points, large part because they were helping off other players. But my only counter is that the European game, that's how they play defense. They always help off the short side corner. You know how I know that? Because Bogey does it every damn time in the NBA, and I lose my mind. I'm like, Bogey, this is the NBA. This is not EuroLeague. Son, you can't leave the guy open in the short corner. The NBA, if teams, and also he would be open and they wouldn't pass him the ball. I'm like, look, if Trae Young is playing with somebody who with the shooting talent of Risacher, and teams were willing leaving him, Trae would hit ahead past teams out of oblivion. To your point, he would get in better shooting rhythms if he's playing in the NBA based on the level of talent of shooter that he's shown. Just based on the shot, to me, I really don't care about the guy shoots. I care about the shot form, the shot release, how fast he gets it off, and that's what impresses me about Risacher. That's why I'm like, okay, the shot's there. I'm impressed by the functional athleticism on a basketball floor. The combine numbers don't bother me.
No, I don't care about that either.
He had no time to train for that.
No,
I really don't.
And that's something the league, by the way, not to say that, not to appeal to authority, because the league's sometimes wrong, but I haven't talked to anybody around the league that's worried about that. Like no one thinks he's a great athlete, because he's not. He's not a super twitchy guy, but he is functionally athletic.
He's a fluid athlete and he's fast. And I'm like, he's willing to jump off either foot for dunks. That's a level of functional athleticism most basketball players do not have.
He's a totally fine athlete. I'm not worried about that really at all. The counter would be on offense. And look, if you think he's going to shoot, it doesn't really matter. I think he has to shoot. Is the only thing I'm a little scared of is that I don't know what pivots if he's only an okay shooter. You know what I mean? Yeah. The secondary skills are not non-existent. I think that his passing has kind of been downplayed. I think he feels the game pretty well. Not going to be a huge hell of a creator, but I think he makes the right play.
To me, I think in a different context.
It's the same thing.
I think a lot of his skills will pop more. I do understand the concerns because the metrics aren't there, but
he's also not. He's just let's just be real for a second.
Yeah,
he's not an on-ball player.
No, he's not.
And that alone, and I'm intentionally doing that broadly, but that alone will turn a lot of people off at this high of a place in the draft. And even I don't know about Gavoni because he loves him, but even people that love Risacher will acknowledge he is not a typical number one overall pick. He's just not. And that's okay. This class is a curve at the top. It just is for all of these guys. But you don't often see a guy that is now flat out projected to go number one on the mocks that I'm seeing in the betting market, et cetera, who is not an on-ball player. How often does that happen, Tyler? Not very often. It's a very, very rare thing to have happen. And it's funny because you know me very well. I'm kind of prone to appreciate Risacher's game more than a lot of people are. I'm not the yay points guy. I'm not the you have to have a bag to succeed guy. I like the little things he does a lot. And it's just weird because this is not the play. It's my brain can't allow me to think this is a number one overall pick. And it's not a problem with him. It's this class and the adjustment. And there is a premium to be had though on these 6'9" wings who can shoot and defend. And I always use that little phrase, but it is 100% true. If you're a 6'9" wing and people like your shooting and you can hold defensively, that is going to be a good player.
Yep.
And that's the appeal. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and summertime means baseball, basketball, and much more. You can bet it all at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook, and this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. Yes, daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Bet on all of your favorite players and teams with quick bets and live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and much more. FanDuel Sportsbook app is really easy to use, and they have everything that you're looking for in the sports betting space. Over-unders, point spreads, money lines, player props, future bets, and much more. The app is safe, it's secure, and they cover the entire range of sports as well. That includes the NBA, of course, WNBA, NFL, college football, MLB, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And now it's an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook, and the place to go is FanDuel.com/lockedon. One more time, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
I'm gonna be honest. ISO ball I don't care for, but also on ball shot creation can be developed like that, especially if in a proper environment. I think he can get there. I do get the concerns about it. It's just to me, I would have liked to see more out of the FIBA 19. If I'm going to be concerned about Risacher, he wasn't dominating FIBA 19s, and he wasn't dominating. He's never dominated his age group. And
no, so a year ago, people I wasn't there. I wasn't there, but Hoop Summit, people that were there at the annual game in, is it Portland? I think it's Portland. Yeah. People were very unimpressed by him. Yeah, that's only a year ago, but that's, to your point, against his age group, his level of competition. And like we just said, he had a really good year after that. But that's only a year ago, and people that I trust, I think Sam even said on the show, he was like, I didn't like him at Hoop Summit at all. He was just out there. Even less than a year ago, he played some games earlier this year where people were watching oh, that's supposed to be a prospect, and not in a bad not in a he was terrible way, but more he was kind of in an invisible way. And that's kind of that's more the concern. I think.
And that's the role that he was in. But right,
I agree with you.
I get it, and I get Hawks fans being adverse to this type of player. I'm not.
You're gonna love this, Tyler. You're gonna love this. I got a question today in my DMs that was basically my Hawks group chat keeps comparing Risacher to DeAndre Hunter. What can I tell them? And my reaction,
he's a real athlete. One.
Well, that's
one. He's an actual NBA athlete, not whatever the hell DeAndre Hunter thinks.
I didn't mean to trigger you.
No. I'm triggered now. Because I hear this too, and I'm like, yeah. Y'all seen DeAndre Hunter jump for alley-oop before? Yeah, that's a.
Well, they're also, and even beyond. I know this triggers you about DeAndre. Even beyond that, they're just very different players. I understand they play the same position, and they're both not on ball creators. I get they're just very different players. For instance, here's one example, right? Risacher is an off ball player. I don't mean that in a negative way, but he moves well off the ball. He's used to playing off the ball. He's used to making these catch and shoots on the move. Hunter's never done that. Even when I liked Hunter a lot as a prospect, he never did that. It's always been the robotic thing with him. He catches, he holds. He's still doing that now. Defensively, right? Risacher and Hunter both had good defensive pedigree coming in. Risacher is way more slithery. He's shown a lot of get around screens, and he can be a little bit more of a team defender. Risacher is, I think for me anyway, one of my favorite traits about Risacher is his team defense. He just knows where to be. He reads. Especially early on in his career, Hunter had no clue what to do on team defense. He was billed as the on-ball stopper guy. So as prospects, I get it, same range, same position, same team, which is why it's coming up. Hawks fans are they're thinking PTSD of this guy that's on their team that now they don't like very much. But if you go a half step away, they're really not similar. I know I get the positional thing. They're really not similar players, at all.
Cam Reddish would probably be a better.
I think that it's better. I think it actually is better. Although Cam did more of the on-ball. Cam did more of the I think I'm an on-ball player thing than Risacher does. To his detriment, by the way. Cam couldn't do that at the NBA level, but he thought he could.
And Cam's biggest issue is that he can't shoot. That's just it's hell.
It never came for Cam. I agree.
I mean, and it might one day come, but he just his inability.
I should say it hasn't yet.
His inability to consistently make open jump shots is what's really hampered his career. Because defensively, he's kind of gotten there, and I feel like Risacher is kind of similar build, similar
that's slithery. That's more skinny. Hunter, again, not to trigger you. Hunter is that more bulky. He's got the shoulders. It's more boxy. Risacher is much more slithery and functional and fluid. No one has ever said DeAndre Hunter is fluid. No one ever.
I've seen Risacher also do things tip rebounds to his teammates. Unheard of concept within the Atlanta Hawks organization.
I
want to stick the rebounding thing from Hawks fans. I don't get this. I don't get dismissing rebounding.
Well, and you and I are both old enough to remember this. You remember when people really, really, really did not like Al Horford because he couldn't rebound? Because I remember that vividly.
I mean,
vividly.
What sucks about Al Horford is he was a good rebounder until the two pectoral.
Right, but you know what I'm saying though. There was this whole like 5-year discussion about Al Horford playing center and that he couldn't rebound, and it's like, okay, that happened for a guy who was a proven all-star at that point. People were, but now you're right. People don't seem to bring it up anymore. Number one, I'm not going to do the Capella thing, but Capella's a great rebounder.
Because Capella's on the team. Because Capella's on the team, we just don't realize when Capella's out the game. And then there's
Sarr. So we're going to talk about Sarr. I guess we could probably do that now a little bit. Sarr right now, I'm not saying he can't be a rebounder, but right now is a bad rebounder. He just is. He's not a good rebounder. And how much do you care about that? Positionally, all that stuff. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler. I don't think you dislike Sarr. I'm sure people that read your Twitter are going to think you're out on Sarr.
That's the funny thing. I like him. I would be fine if the Hawks picked him.
You and I have talked more offline. I think if you only look at Twitter, people will be like, wow, he's not really high on Sarr at all. And I think you like him. But okay. I know you like Clingan more. We've already we sort of alluded to that already. What do you make of this whole Sarr thing? Because I intentionally held this off with you until now. There's so many things going on here between the Wizards thing. They reportedly want the Wizards and don't want the Hawks.
Makes no sense, but
there's that. There's the positional thing. If you watch him, he does not act like a center on offense at the very least. On the floor, he plays like he wants to be a perimeter player. There's that. Everyone agrees, I think, for the most part, the defense is potentially special. Potentially, absolutely. I'm not saying he's going to be there, but it's the traits. The traits there are really, really good. I'm being broad, but like, what do you think of him? And look, you already sort of gave it away in that I was going to ask you what you would think if the Hawks picked him number one, kind of not out of nowhere, but in a mild surprise. As of right now, it would be a mild surprise if he was the pick, based on all the intel out there, not because of the player. What do you think of that if they did it?
I would think the Hawks are comfortable with him coming off the bench and maybe playing some G League games. At least if they want to develop him offensively. Like I people are going to flame me for it, but I need people to understand. No. Offensively, he is a mess. Like
I would use the term work in progress.
There are things he does on offense where I'm like, well, no real team that's trying to win games is going to let him do this. Like, if he's
Tyler, I have a secret for you. That might be why he wants to go to Washington.
Exactly, and this is why he wants to go to Washington, because like, I'm like, okay, he's only comfortable. Like, and the primary issue with him on the offensive end, he's truly only comfortable with the ball in his hands at the top of the key, where he's able to go downhill on a player and beats them with speed to the rim, or like he's able to like get on balance and take a mid-range jump shot. Like a lot of it, honestly, like his mid-range jump shooting kind of reminds me a lot of LaMarcus Aldridge, just how he's able to rise up over his defender and constantly, like, as long as he's on balance. His issue is like he really does struggle with balance. Like that's something Andrew Kelly really brought to my attention with John Collins way back when, where he always talked about how John's always on the floor because he's always falling down. And I hadn't considered that it's not that he's getting fouled, it's just that he has a hard time maintaining his core balance when he's up in the air, and it's easy to knock him back, away. The difference between John Collins and Alex Sarr, John Collins had truly elite touch, whereas Sarr's touch is like, it's not the best right now. Like, that it can't be better. It's honestly pretty good. Well, I should say it's pretty good touch, but it's not elite touch. It's not elite. It's not, and it's important that it's not elite touch for him because he doesn't dunk the ball, like or like he doesn't catch alley oops, and he doesn't like.
This is one of those things
you're not gonna see highlights of Alex Sarr just going full length of the floor dunking it like Mo Gay does.
I'm so glad you brought this up. So not to cut you off, but it's part of this conversation, right? I see this all the time, and I'm not picking on fans because I'm sure they haven't watched a ton of them. They're seeing highlights. I get all that. and they see the measurables. If you watch Alex Sarr, he doesn't really run pick and roll and dive to the rim. Like there's this thought about this. There's this thought out there that I get all the time. I mentions that's like, oh, he's gonna be this lob finisher and all this rim runner. No, he's not a rim runner. Now could he be in the future? Sure, but he's not honestly, given what his rep is, he's not a fantastic vertical athlete.
No,
like he's a pretty good athlete, and obviously he's 7'4" wingspan, all those things, but he's not a like go to the square and catch this high lob from Trae Young kind of guy right now, nor is he like an end-to-end like game wrecker like in transition like Jalen. You know what I mean? He's not doing that kind of stuff. It's functional on the bright side. He can kind of finish when he has these kind of special looking finishes that are really, really, really encouraging when they happen, but they're not above the rim finishes. They're like multi-move.
It's very Pascal Siakam-y.
Yep.
Where it's like he gets the defender off balance and then he lays it up around or above them with his.
Well, and the more lofty comparison that I've heard is it can kind of look like Giannis does sometimes. Now he's not Giannis, nor is he Giannis physically. That's what I mean. The time it's what I was gonna say is it's the times when Giannis can't get all the way there and dunk.
Yeah.
When he makes those like two-step moves and he covers so much ground, given how long he is. But Giannis is stronger. Of course, Sarr's going to get stronger. He's 19 years old. He's going to get stronger. But Giannis ballooned to the point where his shoulders, well, he'll just knock you off your spot. That's a huge development that he had. But also, to your point, you just said, Giannis is dunking those. And maybe Sarr will. But right now, there's this thought process of like he's going to be this pick and roll threat. And all. No, he doesn't really play pick and roll. And when he does, he pops. He's not a roll guy at all right now.
Consistent popper, and I don't like his catch and shoot jump shot right now. Like I think the form is bad. Like if he'll take them, which I'm encouraged by. But I generally agree with you. I'm like, and I think John Hollinger, because John and Nate Duncan podcast, I think he brought the point up that he felt like Sarr shot so much because he had to shoot it, just because he wasn't doing anything else in the half court. You know, it's like if he's not going to be a roll man, though again, like he flashes skill as like in the short roll, but like rolling to the rim, because like they had Bryce Cotton. Like Bryce Cotton's a very good 3-point shooter, point guard, you know, operating the pick and roll with. And I'm like, I'm watching these games. They're never running just straight pick and roll with Bryce Cotton, who will bomb from like 28 plus feet.
No,
and Alex Sarr diving to the rim. Like
they don't do that. And honestly, I think especially Hawks fans, it's a Hawks podcast, of course. People are kind of envisioning what Trae and John used to look like, or what Trae and a younger Capella looked like when it was like spam pick and roll, and those guys were rolling to the rim all the time. That's just not the way Sarr plays, and he might become that eventually, but I think people are kind of projecting that onto him because of Atlanta. And look, I have made this point, and I think you'll agree. I understand more than you do why he want to go to Washington for the blank slate aspect. Now that could be a red flag too. Like when I think they might know
it's a red flag to me. It's a red flag to me when you.
I get it.
Let me bring why I think it is.
Go ahead.
So you're reading up on Sarr. One, he was in the Real Madrid like development system. Then he left for OTE for 2 years. And like his OTE like numbers weren't that good. I mean, they were, you know, it's hard to gauge what OTE is and isn't.
He was also those numbers are largely useless.
but I'm like, I'm just saying, I'm like, you know, I felt like NBL was the first time he was finally playing like real basketball for a change, where he's in a real role, what's going to look like at a professional level, and running, you know, professional, you know, offenses. And he looked like somebody who hadn't been doing it for his career, like who had not been a center, which is, you know, whatever. But like to me, it felt like his agency and his team kind of knew what his strengths and weaknesses were, and they put him in a location where he'd be coming off the bench, playing less than 20 minutes a game for a good team. But he would never play center, by the way. Like he didn't play center that often for Perth.
Nope.
So he's always in these two big lineups where he's kind of insulated on both ends from the physicality that you need from your center. So like that's kind of my thing with Sarr is like, and I would still be okay with taking him one. That's how special I think his defense is. I want to be clear here. I would still, even with all these, if you were willing to meet with the Hawks, him not willing to even talk to these, to the Hawks. Like there's a level of, do you not want to improve on your weaknesses? Do you not want to face like, hey, if you can do the big man things well, then your wing skills will truly pop, like at a higher level. If you're able to like just do the set hard screens, roll to the rim, be a threat there, then teams have to defend you differently. Now all of a sudden your dribble packages, your drive packages will play up better. Like at least that's how my thought process is. And then on the defensive end, more would be demanded of you. You wouldn't just be in the Robert Williams role, which respect to Robert Williams, who is a very good player for the Celtics. He was never anchoring their defense. Like he was always playing off of Al Horford or another center.
And it is a little bit easier. I mean, that's the thing. Like
it's just easier to do. It's easier to make that type of impact. That's why like when Jaren Jackson won that deep point, I was like, what are we doing here? Like, respect Jaren, but Steven Adams was the one doing all the hard work. He's cleaning it up.
And offensively too. Like there's this. I know you mentioned it, but like yes, and it because they don't. I don't think that his camp believes that he's going to be a long-term center. That's part of this. And if he's a 4 long-term, which I'm not ruling out, but if he's a 4 long-term, his offense is even further away.
Yeah,
to me, like his offense works better if he's a center.
Absolutely.
If he's a full-time 4, unless you're pairing him with like the best possible, let's just say Brook Lopez, like the two guys in the league, Porzingis and Brook Lopez, who can bomb centers.
Honestly,
Porzingis are. You know what I mean? One of the 2 or 3 guys in the league that are actually like bomber shooters from center, which is like, same with John Collins, a guy that we both like. It would have been great if John could play with Brook Lopez or could play with Porzingis, but he can't. There's only 2 or 3 guys that can actually do that role. So it's just weird to me. And I think also, I know I'll be accused of being a Trey Bay. That's fine. Wouldn't you want to play with Trae Young? I feel like Trae Young, for all his look, no matter what you think about Trae Young, and I know people have kind of given up or whatever it is, his people have soured. That's for another discussion. One thing I think we can agree on, if you've watched a lot of Trae Young in his career, is that every single big man he has ever played with has had better numbers with Trae Young. Every single one. Every single one. Alex Len, Dwayne Dedman, Damian Jones, Clint Capella, Onyeka Okongwu, John Collins. I could go on.
Clint Capella played with James Harden, by the way, guys. And like I thought Clint like the pick and rolls with Trey and Clint were just better statistically than anything he and James Harden were doing.
I mean, the best. I know it's a long time ago now. People weren't paying attention that much back then. But the best argument is the guys I mentioned at the beginning of that. Your Alex Len, Dwayne Dedman, Damian Jones types. Trey got them second, third contracts because they were so good in the pick and roll. Damian Jones was able to play probably 2 more years in the NBA than he probably should have because of Trey. And I don't mean that like in a way where we don't have to be silly about Trey. I'm not saying he's the best player in the league. He's not. But if you're a limited offensive big man, and you'd rather go play with not Trae Young in a situation in Washington where they have some guys I like, but they don't have a point guard or anything close to a point guard that they're building with long term. If I'm Alex Sarr, like I think I would hope that someone's told him like, hey Alex, you might need to anchor yourself to a guy who can give you the ball, set you up well. And I mean, look, okay, while we're here, you like Jalen, I like Jalen. You mentioned Sarr coming off the bench. If they draft him, we'll talk about it even more. But I do not believe, and I've said this before, that if opening night in October, if the Hawks draft Alex Sarr, that he will be one of their 2 best bigs to be starting on opening night.
He wouldn't. Because
that's the reality. Now, there are politics involved at number 1 overall in a way that they're not at number 10 overall. I get that too. But you know who, like Alex Sarr is not going to be better than Onyeka Okongwu in October. He's just not. No matter, put Clint to the side. They might trade Clint. Clint's a whole different. But even just on the team right now, Okongwu and Jalen's obviously a lot better than Sarr is right now today. So like you want to start him, that's fine. But maybe that's why. Maybe it's as simple as that. And I don't agree with that.
It could be as simple as, am I going to start? And you're like, probably not, just because we don't trust you at center right now.
Well, and credit to the Hawks for not lying about it if that conversation happened, because that would be a lie.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the agency and the Hawks have probably been like, he wouldn't start over Jalen. There's just no chance. Like,
well, no chance.
I hear. Well, it's one of those things where it's like you hear Sam talk about like he thinks Okongwu and Sarr would be a great pairing together. I'm like, I agree. When Sarr is coming off the bench for Jalen Johnson, because
no, I liked just for everybody that missed it. By the way, you should listen to this podcast that I had Sam Massini on the show.
We've talked about,
we have. But just to reference that because you brought it up, Sam's point was basically you could have a heck of a three-headed front court monster with Jalen, Sarr, and Okongwu, where you could play a lot of your minutes with those three guys. And I agree that would work, but the politics involved. If you drop Alex Sarr number one, is he going to be okay coming off the bench for a year or two? Like maybe not. And also, even with not to go back to Clingan, who I know you love, I don't know if they're going to start Clingan at center on opening night. I assume they probably will.
I think it's just to get back to Clingan. The only reason why I think they will is because I think if they draft Clingan, they're able to trade their centers for non-centers.
So a lot more. And this is something we'll say too. But
you're just able to do more stuff. But that's a pod for another day. I don't want to.
No, it is, but it's a lot more projectable. Which I'm not saying this is why you draft him, because I am a big proponent of you do not draft for rookie seasons. But Clingan is so much more likely to be pretty good as a rookie than Alex Sarr. It's not even a discussion in my opinion. But beyond that, there's no like middle ground. If the Hawks love Clingan to the point where they draft him number one or trade down a spot or two and take him on purpose, and that's their guy, there's no mystery. He is your long-term starting center from that moment on. The moment he is drafted, he is the guy you write in pen at center. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but you are hitching your wagon to Donovan Clingan as our center long-term. What does that mean for Okongwu? That's a whole different discussion we'll have later on if it happens. But with Sarr, it's way less clear. It's like, we might be drafting him thinking he's our long-term center. We might be drafting him thinking he can do a little bit of both. There's this thought that I don't think is crazy about Jalen playing more at the three. That's not impossible to see, but the Hawks to this point view Jalen as a four.
I'm going to be honest with you. I would rather Jalen play the center position than the three.
I said that on Patreon one night. I said that on Patreon one night when there was this whole discussion happening online, and we won't do it now, about Jalen playing the two. And I was like, okay, put this to the side. Jalen has played considerably more center in his professional career than he has played at the three, even the three. Because I know nobody watched it, but in the G League he was playing center like regularly. And
I think the Hawks can construct lineups with Jalen at center that could work potentially. But again, that's a pot for another day.
But they probably won't. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But we said a lot. Those are the three guys that we talked about. And again, I think everyone in the league will be shocked if it's not one of those three, unless it's a trade down to at least 3 or 4. We don't have to keep going super long, but anything else you want to hit on before we get out of here?
I want to talk about Reed Sheppard. I want Reed Sheppard just real quick, just because that would be the pick where they might. That's if they take Reed Sheppard, I'm like, okay, they might be serious about trading Trae Young.
I was gonna say the only way that's my point to every time I do a pod that's not my own and it comes up, I'm like, okay, I like Reed Sheppard quite a bit. The only reason why I'm not more actively talking about Reed Sheppard is because of Trae. I don't think they can take Reed Sheppard with the plan of Trae Young still being here. I think they, but I say that, but I think they might be able to, but they're going to have to revamp this roster considerably. Well, yeah, maybe there's a way. And look, just to be clear, Reed's defense is actually going to be fine. I think it's not about Reed's defense. It's the fact that Reed's 6'2", and we've already seen the small backcourt thing defensively. It's just so hard to overcome. You got to be so good everywhere else defensively for it to work.
But you know what? A small back, and I've said this before, a small backcourt can work if one of the guys is willing to do the hard work of rebounding, playing with physicality, playing with effort. And I think Reed, based on like what I've seen from Reed Sheppard, I think he has the build to do that. Like Podzinski from the Warriors, like not to compare him to another white guy, but
Well, it's the only thing you're allowed to do. You
But,
can't
but
compare
I mean, another player who does this is Derek White, even though he's
there.
bigger.
We go.
But my point is like if you're able to do some of the stuff that bigger players can, and I think with his functional athleticism, talking about functional athlete, I think he's a very good borderline great athlete. Honestly, I think he can be in the get rebounds, be in the passing lanes, play with more effort and physicality in a way. Like the reason why Trey DeJounte sucks is honestly DeJounte doesn't hold up his end of the bargain as a physical defender. He's just not very physical.
Well, that was the theory. We talked about it a lot.
They got work. What I've said this before. I think DeJounte is one of the fakest rebounders in NBA history. Like no contested rebounds, no tip rebounds. Like just if he's getting these one-handed highlight rebounds, but he's not competing with bigger players for these but these are the type of plays that you need. If you're going to play two small guards, you need one of the guards to be able to do this. And I think Reed might be able to do that. Whereas that's why I think it might work combined with Reed's superior shooting. Like I don't want to dismiss not taking somebody who shot 50% from the 3-point range.
No, and that's the thing.
Off the catch and shoot, off the dribble, off everything. Like that's such a 3-point shooting is such a difference maker. It might not matter. If he's a small guard.
I said it earlier today.
If he's going to shoot 13 threes per 100 possessions at 43+%, it won't matter. You just have offensive players.
It's not It's not the same thing, but you and I have both been on this before where the Hawks have been at their best for the last 4 years when Bogey's on the court. And Reed Sheppard and Bogey are not the same player, but they do a lot of similar things. And
Trey, Garrison, Bogey dominated last season. Garrison Matthews, smaller guard, by the way, people. But Garrison literally puts his life
on the line. No, and the reason, and I want to be careful how I say this, I think Reed Sheppard is clearly a top 5 guy in this class. Clearly. The challenge is, I think you are limiting yourself a little bit, taking him at what you would have to probably take him in either 1 or 2. He might go to Houston at 3. That's very, very much possible. And I think that I wouldn't take him number 1 on a team with Trey as my best player. I just wouldn't. But if they did it, I could make the case. We just kind of talked about it, but I said earlier, but Kevin Pelton's model has Reed as the number 1 player on the stats only model that knows nothing about anything else. That doesn't know that he's a white guy. That's a legacy from Kentucky. Any of that stuff. It's just the numbers.
His dad played for the Hawks.
Hawks legacy, Reed Sheppard, but he's number 1 ahead of Clingan, ahead of Edey, ahead of any of those guys on the stat projection model. So I think it's highly unlikely that he ends up being on the Hawks. But I agree, he's the one guy that's consistently, for the people that do the numbers, way up there. And if it's not Clingan's rim protection, that's the best single skill set in this draft. It might be Reed shooting.
Shooting, yeah. And that's look, man. If your Hawks want to win some damn games, they got to get more shooting. Period.
Well, you and I joked. I shared something on Twitter. I think it was Tom Haberstroh did a study. Somebody did a study about 3-point shooting in the playoffs this year, and it was extremely highly correlated as to who shot the ball better from 3. And I kind of jokingly, in my snarky fashion, was this is why I talk about 3-point shooting all the time. But it's true. All number of stats, and people always get mad at me for focusing on heavy on that on these recap podcasts I do. But it's guys, it correlates with winning. It just does. You have to make shots. And by the way, not just make shots, take threes.
Take them through contest. That's what
Quinn preaches that all the time. It's not just threes, but you got to take a lot of them. And I track that for a reason. If they trade down, Clingan's probably Clingan's probably the target, but we should at least mention the names. You got Steph Castle, Reed Sheppard, Modest Buzelis, who was in for a workout the last few days in Atlanta. I was reported. I think if it wasn't reported, I'm reporting it. Somebody reported it. That happened. I heard that. Maybe a little bit further down, you get into the Dalton Connect, Ron Holland. Lots of names there. I still think it will surprise me if the Hawks trade down beyond 4 or 5 at the absolute most. I think they do want a premium pick in this class, from what I've heard. And part of that's that they seemingly want Clingan. I do think that still right now, as of Monday night, 8:30 Eastern, as we're recording this, the Hawks' dream scenario might be an extra asset and Clingan.
Yeah,
I think.
I'm
not saying that's definitely the case, but that kind of rings true.
Brad's not reporting, and I'm just going off vibes and tea leaves.
Pure vibes.
But like, I'm
kind of reporting. I'm not saying that's like definitive, but like I have heard that they like that they like Clingan, and they also don't want to take number one, and that means that they kind of want him, but they understand that they might be able to get him later.
I tweeted a long thread about this on Twitter. I feel like the Wizards want Sarr, Sarr wants the Wizards, Clingan and the Hawks want each other. Just based on, honestly, Dan Hurley gave up the goose.
I think that is accurate. Yes.
And then the Rockets, unclear. I think they want Reed Sheppard. I
think they're going to take Reed. If I had to guess, they're taking Reed.
And like, to me, and just like game theorying it a bit. Shout out to Sam Facini. Like, I understand the Grizzlies are like dangling Marcus Smart.
Your Memphis Grizzlies, we should say.
And like the people are talking about that. I'm like, but why would the Rockets help the Grizzlies get a center? You know, these teams are in direct competition of each other. And like, what is Marcus Smart doing for the outlook of their team that honestly Reed Sheppard wouldn't do?
Well, I would imagine that rumbling is maybe tied to Udoka being there.
Yeah, I mean, I respected Udoka, but I'm like, Marcus Smart is on the downturn of his career. Why are you?
Yeah, he's not getting. And also, they got other. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Plus, they have a men already. They have their defensive. They have guys in Marcus Smart role. Like I'm just game theory with the Rockets. Like, and like they're not going to trade with OKC. Like, well, and then there's research. I mean, I think you said this too, but then there's a lot of thought that the Spurs want Risacher. Or Wemby would like to play with Risacher, or both.
Gen Z or whatever they are, they want to play with each other.
And look, and that doesn't mean the Hawks are going to be able to get a normal trade package from 4-1 in this class. I'm not expecting that to happen necessarily, but it shouldn't surprise anyone if the Hawks and Spurs find a deal at some point. Maybe it's conditional. That's one of the things that's been talked about that I think is very practical. Is that all right? The Hawks take Risacher at 1 in coordination with the Spurs. And they have an agreement of some kind that says if Clingan gets to 4, we do the trade. If not, Risacher, we're keeping you and we're moving on from there. That's possible.
And I think another possibility is the Hawks take Sarr at 1, and the Wizards.
Maybe they stare him down. And I don't know if the Hawks have that in them. Maybe they do. I don't know.
That's where one of those things where I'm like, I wish this front office had more experience just in general. Like, well,
there's some messaging out there. Like, again, it was reported the Hawks might just do it over. And like I said, we'll bring it full circle. If they think Alex Sarr is the best prospect in the class, take him.
Take him, yeah.
If they think, and by the way, same thing applies to Clingan. Well, yeah, it would be great in theory to get cute and get your guy and move down a la draft day, as Sam brought up on the podcast. But in the end, if they really think Clingan's the guy, just take him.
Just take him. One. And if you want more picks, trade one of your billion other players that you're trying to.
Well, Risacher. I mean, we should to be fair. I wouldn't do this, but like if they think Risacher is the guy, just take him. Like that, it shouldn't be that big of a discussion. And I have advocated for trading down in this class because in a vacuum, and look, it's not a vacuum. Life is not a vacuum. These are human beings talking on calls. In a vacuum, my tier is not like hugely separated, which is why I would, in theory, be in favor of a trade down if I was the Hawks. But I'm not the person making the decision. And if Landry / Tony / whoever is convinced that they have their guy in this class, you have the number 1 pick. That's the number 1 appeal of that is just be able to take whatever you want.
That's the value of the first pick. And like just in general, like the Hawks cannot operate this first round pick as a way to get back the assets they lost in the DeJounte Murray trade. That is a sunk cost decision. If they can get some of those picks back from the Spurs, awesome. But like that should not be priority 1. They got to accrue maximum value from this pick if they're going to trade back, because you're risking losing out on the player that you actually want, and that's
you're risking that. And secondarily, we act like this doesn't matter, but it does in practical terms. You're also risking the PR. If you are number 1, and look, even I just said 10 seconds ago that I would be totally fine moving down. but I don't have to make the decision. And if they, let's just say Alex Sarr for probably the prime example of this, right? If they trade number one or just don't pick Alex Sarr, and Alex Sarr becomes the 95th percentile version of Alex Sarr, people will be talking about that like they did Marvin Williams and Chris Paul and whatever else for years, decades. Like, that's the risk. And Landry had a question, and he kind of smiled about it, but about like the pressure of being number one. And look, Landry played in the NBA. It's a different makeup. The guy was a professional athlete. He's a confident guy. But at the same time, like, man, there is a little bit of external noise pressure at number one overall, that because the spotlight is just on you. And if you miss, or if you trade back and the guy that you traded hits, that is extra pressure, like extra rile up. It's also job pressure. Landry Fields is not an established GM. If he misses this pick, even if it's not his pick, he gets blamed for it and gets fired.
Yep.
That's what happens. That's the NBA. We're not fooling around. We're not fooling around here. So yeah, it's going to be wild. I don't know what to expect. 48 hours away. Tyler, I know you're doing lots of ATL on 29, which is why I'm going to let you go now, and also plug it. We talked about it earlier, but it's my favorite Hawks podcast that I listen to. I don't listen to my own show unless I have to for editing purposes, but go ahead, plug away, my friend.
So yeah, ATL 29 podcast with me, Kevin, and Glenn Willis. Kevin, I think we're going to do a couple more podcasts. I know we're doing one. We're going to have one later today. So after you watch this Locked On Hawks podcast on YouTube, or on iTunes, or all the other stuff.
Nice. Thank you.
Catch us on iTunes as well. ATL 29. We'll be having a podcast out later today as well. So we're not in direct competition. It's all part of the bigger Hawks lore, guys.
There is plenty of time to listen to both shows. You also showed your age like I do by using the word iTunes. I really appreciated that.
Did I say that? Wow.
You and I are washed and say the word iTunes on this podcast. Anyway, I'm just giving you grief. Thank you for being here, Tyler. In a little bit, I'll bug you again to talk about whatever they actually do between the draft and trades and all that stuff. You and I will reconvene in the near future. I don't know exactly when, but we'll talk again. I appreciate you always being willing to jump on. People should be listening to ATL on 29. Follow Tyler on Twitter if he lets you, at Jonesy2x4. He may not let you. It's a protected account. Might say no. He's got a real job. You can't just be open like I am on the Twitter machine. We got to do it. We're late in the show. Any recommendations? I forgot to ask you. This is
Delicious in Dungeon just ended on Netflix, so give that a watch. New Rex though, I haven't. Konosuba season 3 is out. I mean, if you're a Konosuba fan, you already know what the deal is. But I don't really have like any new.
I just had to ask. I mean, it's traditional. I have to ask you
primarily because his number one pick has taken.
You're watching basketball. You're watching basketball.
Right, I got my chart. I got my imaginary chart in my head where I'm like I'm plotting what the Hawks can and can't do. So everybody's shout out to Sam. Everybody's game theorying out here about what the Hawks can do with this number one overall pick. So that's really been taking a lot of my time. That's why I need this draft to hurry up and get over it.
Yeah, it's almost over. Look,
so I can get back to watching my anime and manga more.
There you go. And of course, as a reminder, free agency begins literally on Sunday. So it's less than a week from now. Free agency starts and it never stops. Alas. All right. Thank you for being here, Tyler.
They at least leak that. They're not leaking
a little bit. Yeah, that's true. All right. Thank you, sir, for being here. As for everybody else, please subscribe. I will have, I promise you, barring injury to myself, another episode on Tuesday evening into Wednesday after this one to kind of preview final stuff before the draft. And then, of course, I'll be back after the draft is over on Wednesday. Stay tuned. Subscribe. See you all next time.